Well, welcome to another question and answer. Got really busy at the shop and I'm just finishing up one of the jobs, and I'm going to be working on couple of small projects while we're being asked the question and answers. So please come in with your questions, and hopefully I'll have a ready answer. And by the way, if I don't have an answer, we can always get back to you through an email or through the chat. So we're really excited. We finished up class this first semester, and class number 6 went already up. I hope people are enjoying that. We're really excited about the next class, which is a really good class with Jimmy, and we think we're going to have, you're going to like that, hopefully. And we did have a question that came in off after the question answer question last week, and it was somebody asked, if you're teaching upholstery, does that take business away from you? They were concerned about that because we're going to be offering, I'm really excited about this kit that we're offering. We're offering the video on how to teach, pretty much, and it comes with the booklet. It's a master booklet for the teacher, which is a copyrighted book that I wrote, and that will accompany the video. And so the answer to that question is, if you have a little shop or you're starting a shop, if you're a little bit more advanced in your skills, this is an excellent way to get customers. I have found that these people who take the class, the students, are my best customers because they understand the work a little bit better. You get to know your customer. What better way to get to know your customer than to have them come into your shop? Or better yet, you don't even have to do that. That's a big step to having them come into your own shop. But every community almost across this country has an adult ed program, and we're going to show you or teach you or talk about that also in these videos that we're going to be coming up, talking about the kit and how to register, how to go about that with an adult ed, with the public school system pretty much in your community. This is a great way for you to start. And it just builds your business. I think you're going to like this. Anyhow, so ask your questions, ask away. I did want to go, I'm going to be doing a small project while we're waiting for some questions to come in. And what it is, these panels, these little fussy panels that came off a sofa. These can be really difficult for people because of how fussy they are and flimsy they are. This is made out of cardboard, and I really do want to keep the panels that are on this sofa because they're not in bad shape. But I do want to show you that they have these little prongs in the back. It gets upholstered. There's going to be a piping that I'm going to do for you. I'm going to show you how to do that. And these little prongs, hopefully we'll be able to line up these prongs after it's upholstered and then hammer this back in. So the first thing you want to do with these prongs is get them straight, because sometimes they get crooked. They're very sharp, and you need to upholster around these. I don't know if you can see that. So what I'm going to do is I already have the fabric cut, and I'm going to upholster one. Start with one. It's a herringbone fabric. So like if you've seen the videos, if you've seen the classes, you know that every fabric gets marked the top, okay? Which I have a little arrow, a little X here indicating the top. That's pretty important. And on the herringbone, I like to always put my herringbone with the going up in the center. And so what I'm going to do is try to center that with the panel. Now, I am going to go over the old fabric, and I'll tell you why. Because if I take this fabric off, I don't usually like to go over old fabric, but in this case, if I take it off, it's going to destroy the panel, the shape of the panel. And this shape is really molded nicely to the front of the arm that I have, which is in another part of the shop I'm not going to be able to show you. So it's one case where I keep the fabric, okay? Very rarely do I do that. Usually all fabric comes off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my center. And what I'm going to do first is pin staple, and you've seen me do this. Oh, the first thing we're going to do, the very first thing we're going to do is use the right staple, and I'm going to explain that. three different size staples. We have 1/2 inch, 3/8, and we have 1/4 inch. It's the 1/4 inch staple that I'm going to be using on this. It's a really small staple, the smallest that we have. And because that panel is not that thick, and it would go through. I have right now, I have long staples in this. We want to take that out. And for those who don't have the staple gun, you can use really small tacks. You can use 3-ounce tacks on this. I'm going to show you the 3-ounce tacks. Actually, I got a very nice donation from a student from a long time ago. And she had these boxes of tacks. I was so grateful when she came in. And she had actually 3-ounce tacks and 4-ounce. These were the 4-ounce. These are really a small tack that probably would work fine. Let me see. Actually, you'd want a smaller, you'd want at least a 3-ounce tack. The biggest tack you'd want on these panels would be a 3-ounce tack. Or a small tack. You know, you don't want to be putting a 14-ounce tack in these panels if you don't have a pneumatic staple gun, that is. So I'm going to line up. Now what I do is, I don't commit to this staple. So I'm going to just kind of turn my gun a little bit off to the side. And I do recommend goggles for those who don't wear glasses. But even if you wear glasses, you probably should have goggles because staples and tacks can get in the side. But at least if you don't have glasses, if you don't wear glasses, definitely wear goggles. There's some nice goggles up there. You don't even know they're lightweight. You don't even know. Actually, I have a pair I can show you. You don't even know that you have them on. They look like glasses. Okay. Those are kind of nice. But, I mean, for full protection, and you look a little silly, but that's a full goggle. You know, it covers all your eye. You're never going to get a staple or tack in with that, but you need a pair that's a little clearer than this one. There are probably really good goggles that cover the whole eye. I recommend it. I can't tell you how many times I've been doing upholstery when a tack comes flying out and hits my glasses. And if I didn't have my glasses on, you know, God forbid, I might have had a tack in the eye. So what I'm going to do now is and please ask your questions. For those of you who have signed up, numerous people signed up. I hope you're watching, and I hope that your feedback's really important. And if you have any questions, feel free. So what I'm going to do is I pin staple the top and I pin staple the bottom. And I'm going to take a look at this to see how straight I am. So I'm really straight, but what it gave me the opportunity, well, I'm going to change the top. I'm going to take the staple out. It gives you the opportunity to take the staple out because it's only on the side, and I'm going to just move this over a little bit because it was just about 1/8 of an inch off. I'm using my eye for this. For all of those people who aren't comfortable with that, you can actually measure and get a center point. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down one side, and I'm going to pin one side down, pin staple one side. Again, we're not committing to a staple all the way in. Okay. So I have one side pin staple. Now on the other side, which is right in here, you need to make a cut. Okay, it's to the outside arm of the sofa, and that cut. Let me just show you. I make that cut first. What you want to do is you want to make a cut just about like that, at that angle, and the thing about this cut is you have to be really close when you end it. Okay, and then you take one side and you staple. I'm actually stapling that all the way, and then you take this side staple. The reason I stapled that all the way is I want to close that cut up. Okay. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to very lightly. So you know what I see here? I see that I'm a little off, so I'm going to adjust that. It's not too late to adjust that. So I have this, I still have it pin stapled. So that's the nice thing about pin tacking. If you're tacking, you're pin tacking, which is a halfway in tack. when you're stapling, you can pin staple, it's called. At least that's what I call it. So what you're going to do is, I just adjusted that. I moved it over. I moved the bottom over just a little bit. I just didn't like it. Now I'm going to staple it because I know I got it. So that's straight. So now what I'm going to do is on this side, I'm going to finish this side. Get a couple of finished staples in there, and I'm going to show you in a minute how to pleat it. Okay, I'm going to pull this over. Also wanted to mention, we're going to have a blog coming up very soon. We're really excited about the blog because we could talk about past 42 years of upholstery, and some stories are going to be not upholstering stories, but interesting things that we've come across in those years. Actually, I just saw something very interesting online that I was fascinated with that I didn't know existed. They actually have Abraham Lincoln's assassination chair in a museum, and I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of that, but it's a beautiful Victorian chair, as you would imagine it would be Victorian. Excuse me for a minute. Excuse me. And it's got beautiful tufting. It's a red. It looks like a silk. If you go online, Google Lincoln's assassination chair. Now, I always thought, you know, when you think of a theater, I always thought the Ford Theater, I think in modern terms, I think of like a, you know, I don't know why I would have thought that, but that's what I thought. You know, the chairs were very basic and simple, except if you go to some of these new movie theaters with the big recliners now, but where he was in the balcony, this was a finely furnished Victorian, it would look like a Victorian parlor, because the chair, if you Google it, you should Google it and take a look at it. The chair is beautifully hand tufted on the back, and it's beautiful, beautiful horsehair seat and upholstered arms. I mean, it looks like it should be in a parlor, not in a theater. And unfortunately, it had a very unfortunate history to it, but I'm glad they preserved it. So do we have any other questions right now as of now, Patrick? Or no?
No.
Okay. So now I'm going to finish up this panel. Maybe people are just wanting to see me work. You see how it has a little pucker right here? Just a little pucker. I don't know if you can see that on film. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this up now because I've only pin stapled. So it's not a permanent staple or tack, using tack. So it gives me the chance to take it out again. And I'm going to stretch that up because I didn't like that little pucker. It's a little tricky because it's actually a stripe. A herringbone is a stripe. Stripes are usually harder. So I'm going to staple that. So I like the way this is coming out. And now I'm going to go off, I'm going to start stapling up. Now, what we want all our pleats to be in the back of this panel. This panel shouldn't have any pleats in it, like the arm that I have. The rollover arm has these big pleats. The arm comes up to here. And it has these big pleats, and they're all going the same way, by the way. I'm not sure if we've shown you that on our YouTube channel. By the way, don't forget to go on Broadway Upholstery YouTube channel. We have a lot of videos up on that. But I will say again that the classes, I can't stress enough how much information is covered in the classes. So even if you just watch, if you're not working on anything, you're just trying to get information about upholstery, and you want to improve your upholstery, and you don't want to make all the mistakes I made, you should join. You should go up on a class and take a look at what we have. I mean, which brings up the next class for Jimmy. He has upholstered an ottoman, and we've shown how to make handmade buttons. You know, if you don't have a button machine, as long as the button is big, Jimmy actually makes a handmade button. Jimmy cuts his own fabric. Now, Jimmy makes a little bit of a mistake when he cuts the fabric, but actually it was a good thing to show. I mean, not to embarrass Jimmy, but we all make mistakes, especially in the beginning. And so what we did was we showed how to recover from that mistake. He didn't have much fabric. So we made a mistake, but we recovered from that mistake. And that's important too. Problem solving, I can't say it enough, is such a big part of upholstery. You need to be a good problem solver. There's so many problems that come up. I show how to do dining room chair cuts in the back, you know, and in the front during the classes. If you haven't seen the first class, I'm upholstering along with Jimmy. Jimmy's he's the apprentice, and he's asking all the questions that you would ask, and then I'm showing other techniques at the same time. So the camera's going back and forth in that class. It's also something that we did which was very interesting, which I believe Michaela was helping out on, and it was needle points. It was saving Grandma's needle points. So Grandma in this family, she did 6 needle points, and the family was interested in saving them because what was happening was the dining room chairs were collapsing. So it looked like a big indentation, and soon, if they didn't fix it, they were going to come through, and that wouldn't be a good thing. So we show in that segment how to fix that needle point. And we show basic sewing on this in this class too. And so that's just a few things. There's so much more in that class, little tips that come up during each class. I would say has numerous tips, and with the student, the tips I could prevent a lot of mistakes through the student. Okay, we catch the mistakes before they happen on film usually. I notice on other sites even on my station when I was doing a YouTube station channel, where I'm just upholstering, and much of the time I forget all the mistakes that I've made because I'm so proficient at it, and I don't think about actually expressing the problems that might come up as well as we do with the apprentice. So all I can say is sign up and you'll see if you're interested. So that was that. I'm going to finish up this. We have a question.
Will you be doing any work with curved backs in this new semester?
Curved back, yeah. Wow, we're very timely.
And this is from Omni Cody's mama. She says, I've been told that stretching a curved back takes some finesse and challenges.
What a good question, and so fortunate because Michelle, actually Patrick, Michelle's class is going to be posting not the next one, that's Jimmy.
Right.
So Jimmy, over the winter, we have Michelle, who I'm not sure, did she see the first class with Michelle? This person, do you know?
She says, I took your summer semester and loved it.
Okay, so she has seen Michelle. Michelle's coming back because she did so well, I'm telling you. I was so happy with a very difficult job that she had, and I think she did a great job. She also did a second chair at home that was a matching chair that came out just as well. She is doing a tub chair, and it's a contemporary tub chair that has a semi-attached cushion on it that she's changing to a loose cushion, but she has a back, and already in the second class we've filmed, she is really, you'll learn a lot from this. This is more contemporary furniture that we're going to be showing a lot, I think, because let's face it, most of the work out there is contemporary. Most of the upholstery work out there is contemporary. So I happen to be in New England where there's a lot of traditional older furniture, which I have to be good at doing, but I also have to be good at doing the contemporary furniture. I saw a piece today, very unusual piece today in the south end of Boston that is a curved mid-century sofa, a 4-seater sofa. Very unusual. So it has an inside curve, the seat's got an inside curve, and the back has that same type of curve that matches the front. It's very unusual, very difficult to do. So good question. Any more questions? Feel free to ask.
Not yet.
Okay. So I want to finish this panel. So what I'm going to do is the bottom, I'm going to pleat under, like so, off to the side. I'm going to get a staple there. I'm going to get another staple here. And then I'm going to do the same over here. So my goal with this panel is to upholster it with the stripe straight and try to get every single pleat out at the same time. The key, as you have seen, is the pinning. So if you just start tacking this, you're just going to keep taking staples out and tack those staples out. So it's the pinning that's the key, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to pleat, but I'm pleating on the back of the panel, not in the front of the panel. And I'm going to start up at the top, and each pleat is really pulled as tight as I can pull it. In this case, it really worked out good on this side. So all of my ugliness, like a tapestry, is on the back. Like a tapestry. All the stuff that you don't want anybody to see is at the bottom, right? So I'm pulling this. Actually, it's true. It's true with all the contemporary furniture that you do, and even traditional furniture that you do. The inside, if you've taken furniture apart, you see that the insides are not very pretty at all, because that's where all the pulling goes, and all the anxiety about making the front look good goes in the back, and that doesn't have to be pretty because it's covered. Just like a tapestry. I suppose a piece of furniture could be considered like a big piece of tapestry. So, got one more staple. There we go. So I'm going to trim this. Actually, I did want to show you, Michaela is working on a piece that she has to, it's a hard job, it's removing staples. I'm putting the staples in over here, and she's removing staples. How's that going, Michaela?
It's pretty difficult with this tool.
You know why that's hard? Because I'm using an 80 pounds of pressure with the pneumatic staple guns, putting the staples in. So you're trying to take out that 80 pound pressure, and so using tools to do it sometimes it's difficult. You need to use the mallet and the tool and all that. Yeah. Okay. We'll get back to my panel, because I want to take my panel and I want to put a piping around my panel. But before I do that, I need to trim this. You need to trim the fabric. You don't want the fabric overriding the little brads that are stuck in here, the back end. I'm trying to avoid getting stuck when I do this. So you can make a hand, if you have panels, I'll ask a question. This is the question I would ask if I were you. If we didn't have the panels, what would you use? Well, I don't like actually cutting out my own panels. What I do is I can hand make a panel on the piece of furniture, and I can show you how to do that at some point. The key when you do that, though, is the piping. So what basically you do, I can go over it. Let's say you got the big arm like this. You put your piping has to shape out like this, right? Like the panel. You put the piping, dress the piping on there with the staples, and then you put a piece of cardboard tack tape in there so that when you hand stitch it, you're going to hand stitch the piece on the front. It doesn't roll on you. So I don't know if you get that, but hand stitching, actually, for all those people out there who want to be upholsterers, you need to learn how to hand stitch. And I believe if you go on the channel, by the way, if you've not subscribed to the channel, please, the YouTube channel, do that. This only encourages us when we get people subscribing. So, I guess before I put my panel on, I wanted to go over what's coming up on. We're doing a shop. We're going to have a shop on the site, BroadwayUpholsterySchool.com. And what we're going to do is we're going to offer this kit. We're going to offer the book by itself. We're redesigning the book so that it's really nice. But we're offering the kit. And then we're going to be offering membership yearly membership. Somebody asked about that too. That will also be coming up. So we're very encouraged by the great response we had on the first class, and the second class is coming up. And are we able to take, is the second class up yet, Patrick?
Not yet.
Not yet. It's coming. Do we have a date on that?
We're gonna tease it, but 23rd.
23rd. Okay. So
You'll be hearing a lot more about that next week.
and we're going to be advertising that next week, the next class. I definitely think the next class is going to be fun. Jimmy's going to be on it, and Jimmy's style is a little different than Michelle. We love both of them, but Jimmy's got a good sense of humor. So I find that actually teaching, you do need, I think, to have a good sense of humor when you're teaching people. I mean, I think if you're too serious, people get turned off. And by the way, we did start an in-house class, a live class here. It's not a film class though. We have three nice people that take the class. We're hoping that if we get a bigger space at some point, that we can show a class with maybe 6 to 8 people, which we've talked about this, for the cameraman, is going to be extremely challenging. We have one of these big cameras that you get tired putting on your shoulder. You wouldn't think so, but after about 10 or 15 minutes, it would be tiring. And I'm afraid in this class, it would have to be on your shoulder the whole time, I think. Because it's a fast-moving class. I think, though, it would really film out well. I think that that could be coming up. That's a little bit of a longer project for us, because the space that we have right now, there's no way we could do that. Do you have any questions, Michaela, about that, about taking that apart?
You said not to remove the fabric, right?
No, so I'm going to show that. I don't have to turn the camera, but I do want to show that. So you're done with that part, huh?
Yeah.
Good. So Michaela has loosened the bottom of this, but I'm asking her not to take out the fabric. I want to, because this isn't going to be worked on right away. And she did a really good job, I can tell, because I'm rubbing my hand along here and every single staple's been taken out and every little wood piece, so she's knocked them down. That's good. So I'm going to give this back to her. And this, by the way, I'm going to get to this in a minute if we got time. This goes to this chair, this bamboo chair. You just put this over here. And if you want, Michaela, you can work on the next project. Just removing the staples from this. Okay. So let's get to the piping. So the arm that was on this had, the welting came down the arm like this, like so. So it would be the other side. But I don't like that. What I like to do is close up my piping on the panel. I think it looks better. So you don't have to finish the bottom this, but you do have to show both sides as finished. Let me just show you what I mean by that. So when you start your piping, you can start at an angle like this, staple, and then have it form to the corner like so. And then stick. Now you really have to be careful with this part. You don't want to staple in your finger. But I'm afraid there's a lot. I don't know if you see my fingers moving like so back here, and I'm right like this. It has to be at a specific spot. It's just the piping's just peeking out like that, like so. And then you have to staple it, and you have to be confident with your staple gun. And I've shown you during classes to prevent injury. Some of these have safeties. I'll be honest with you, I think the safety is harder to work. You need to get used to, and if you have to unplug the gun, you have to get used to with your trigger finger, right? Not to have your finger always on the trigger. Okay, this is very important. It's only when you're stapling something. When did you hear the head of the gun go in like that? Then your finger comes over and staples. Otherwise, your four fingers and your thumb are in this position like this, and you're never over here with the head of the gun pointing at people or pointing at yourself, or not planted in where you're upholstering. So I'm going to do this slow to show you. It's really important for those who aren't used to this gun. And as I just said to Michaela, 80 pounds of pressure on two-prong staple. If it goes in your finger, it really hurts, and you know it. So I can honestly say, knock on wood, I have never stapled my finger because I've practiced this. I take my gun out of the hose, and in the beginning especially, and I practice. Look what I practice, right? And I'll show you in action now. So
There's a question.
we have another question.
Yes, this is from Erica. She was the one who asked about the curved backs.
All right.
She says, I have a question more to reinforce for my husband who doesn't believe me when I say you need to buy all your fabric at one time, but you have to buy fabric all at once because of the dye lot, yes?
Yeah, dye lots do change, and even here's how careful you have to be. So you are right, Erica. Sorry, husband. I'm a husband, so even when the factory or the warehouse says they have multiple pieces of fabric right in the warehouse at the moment, you have to get a cutting for approval, and the business is called a CFA, and what they do is they send you a little cutting, and you have to match up. If, let's say there's 6 yards and 9 yards, you need 15 yards, let's say, and there's a 9 and 6 yard piece available. Make sure you get the cutting first. And a cutting assures in most fabric companies, anyhow, a cutting assures that nobody else is going to get it while you're deciding on your fabric. This is important too. So Erica, I imagine that you're moving into a professional career in upholstery. That's another thing I can't stress enough how many tips there are upcoming, especially on how to order supplies and things like that. But with the CFA, so let's say you get a 9 and 6 yard piece, you get the CFA, the cutting for approval. You make sure that the color dye is the same. At that moment, they could be different. So yeah, they vary. They do vary in color. Good question. So I'm going to put my gun back on. By the way, I have a leaky gun that I've been too lazy to fix. I don't know if you can hear that. I probably should fix that. But what it needs is a new coupling here, because these ball bearings that are inside here wear out a little bit, and it's not as tight as a connection. So I'm constantly replacing this coupling here, and I like working from the floor like this. As long as there's nobody else working around me, it's okay for me. If there was more than one person in the shop, though, you'd probably want to run the hose from the ceiling. And you've seen those other hoses, those yellow hoses that they look like pigtails. A lot of people like those. They tend not to put as much pressure on the couplings. I just got used to dealing directly with the hose line, so this is how I operate. Some people don't like the hose on the floor. It sometimes gets in the way, like it is now. But anyhow, so I'm going to finish up this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish up to this point, which is a problem point right here. I'm going to staple that. Now, did you see what I did? Just want to look at, see where my fingers are? I'm planting, and then I'm moving my finger over. See that? I also want to show you the angle of the gun when I'm doing this. The angle of the gun is in, not out or even straight. It's in a little bit, right? Okay, so now when I get to this corner right here, I need to cut the salvage in order for it to make a good transition around this area, and I want it to be even, right? that? Now, I noticed that this puckered a little bit on me when I stapled this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch this over this way, tighten this up a little bit more before I bring my welt to that point. See? Nice, huh? Just hold on 1 second, and we're going to swing it around. I just want to show you this in a minute. So we're going to swing this around. See how I'm holding this? I'm holding my finger right there, and then I'm going to get it to this point. I think I'm going to get a staple here. I'm going a little ahead of myself. I'm going to get 4 staples there. I'm only doing this for you guys for the camera, but if you were working with this, you'd want to be working down like so, right? You don't want to be working up like I am right now. I'm trying to show you guys. I'm sacrificing myself for you guys. So what I'm going to do is I have it fixed to here. I'm going to staple this. So you would be like this. You would be like this. Your fingers over here, and then you move your finger over. Right? Watch. I'm going to show you again. I know if professional upholsterers are watching, they're rather going to go, give me a break. But when I was learning, I remember who was training me. They didn't want me to get myself caught with the staple, and this is what they showed me. So I'm always like this. The gun's live, right? You can hear the compressor downstairs pumping the air into the compressor to get ready for the next barrage of staples coming out of your gun. So I have it lined up, right? And I'm moving my finger over and I'm stapling. Okay, I'm flat down here. Okay, I'm going to finish up stapling this. You can actually pin staple or pin tack this on too, the whole thing. And then you can look at it and say, do I like it? If you like it, you can go in between your pin staples or pin tacks and staple it all the way. So I'm actually showing I'm actually stapling now. I'm not doing the pin tack technique. So now on the bottom, I'm gonna just swing this around. I'm gonna try to form this and then staple it down here. So I'm gonna take a bit of Actually, Michaela, any more questions right now? Can you swing the camera around? I just want to show people what I'm doing. Actually, I think we can get a shot of that sofa down there if we move this. I want to put this up. So here's this beautiful arm I have. It's a pleated arm. All my pleats are going in the same direction. And the direction that they're going is you have to start with your pleating over here. And the pleats, I know you can't see this on film, but the pleats are going down. The reason they're going down is for wearability, and also they're not as much of a dust collector this way. Now, when you get to this point, they appear to be upside down, but they're still in the same direction. You don't want to invert. You don't want to invert these pleats. You want to make sure you pick it going down and then just carry it all the way over. And what determines how many pleats on an arm is how stiff or how loosely woven the fabric is. You have to get a feel for that. The way that this arm was done, or any arm, is it's tacked here and down at the bottom, and tacked at the bottom here, and then tightened up to this point, and then you get your first pleat in. And then you come over here and stretch the final stretch over here, and then you get your second pleat on. And the fabric is going to kind of tell you just how wide these should be. But this is the key. The first 2 pleats are the key, because after that you should get the pleats and then they should be evened out. So if this is 2 inches, they all should be 2 inches. And it depends on the fabric. That's what I like about upholstery. A fabric's different. It reacts differently. You really kind of have to read the fabric. So now my panel's just going to go. I don't have time to put this in because sometimes it could be a little tricky. It's going to go right over like that. So let's go back to the bench, talk a little bit more, and see if there are any other questions. Feel free to ask any question, as long as it's upholstery related. I'm sure you're getting questions that aren't upholstery related, right, Patrick?
No.
Oh, okay. How are we doing on the chat room? Anybody asking on the chat? Nope. Okay. All right, so we showed you the panel. I'm going to put this aside for a minute. And put this over here. So we had this bamboo chair come in to the shop. And it's probably kind of a neat chair because some people call it rattan. It has an upholstered back that's put on first. And I'm going to actually take this apart for you guys to show you. These are very tricky chairs to do because, especially to redo from the manufacturer, they don't give us a lot of stapling space in here, and I'll show you that in a minute. But what's unusual about it, it's kind of a neat look, first of all, that the fabric's behind the rattan or the bamboo, and it just is a nice feature. It's just a little more difficult to upholster, rather than have a separate panel on the back, like the front is, and I'll show you that in a minute. Just turn this way. So it's double piped, and sometimes the double pipings from a manufacturer is stapled on. I'm not sure about this. I will find out in a minute. But what we do as custom upholsterers, we actually hot glue. And I did want to bring up the fact that hot gluing, the glue guns are very important. We use this a lot in upholstery. We do a lot of double piping. Even on antiques, you know, we're finding that some of our Victorian pieces come to us after being upholstered maybe a half a dozen times, where the wood is challenged, and people, you know, with the nails that they used to use, the big heavy decorative nails. So oftentimes switching over to a double piping on a Victorian chair is not a bad idea at all. Actually, it looks kind of nice, and it saves the wood. So we do use a lot of that. But if you're going to buy a glue gun, you have to make sure that it's an industrial gun. This one here is called an Arrow, and it has two settings. I guess that's the key for any gun that you buy. I find that the guns in the arts and crafts stores are not hot enough. This is really important. If you don't get your glue hot enough, it's not going to do the job. Your double welt will fall off. And that's the worst thing that can happen, especially if you're getting into a professional arena. So make sure that if you get a gun anywhere, even at a hardware store, make sure that it has two settings, the high and the low. So I actually have the high setting taped on this, because the low setting doesn't do the job. So that said, you really have to be careful with hot glue. And the reason that the arts and crafts stores don't have the hot glue that's hot enough is they don't want people hurting themselves. So, but you do need it on a high. If you get you need it on the high setting. So that's that. Now I want to see if they've got this stapled or if they've got it glued. I think they probably have it stapled because stapling is a little easier than gluing. But I don't advise stapling for anybody out there. You staple in between the two pipings. Sometimes they color. This is a little trick. They color the staples. You can do this on cambric too if you want. Actually, that wouldn't be a bad idea. You can color your staples. Let me show you. Actually, this is kind of a neat idea. So these are the little tricks that in the class in the hour and a half that we have for one class, my students will bring up. Well, how do you what can you do? That's a shiny staple. I don't want shiny staples on the cambric. Oh, okay. So why don't we just take a magic marker and why don't we just color the bottom like so? Why don't we just make you a black staple to match the black cambric on the bottom of the chair? Thank you, Irving. Irving was an upholsterer when I first started working. He was in his 80s when I knew him, way back in the 70s. And I think Irving showed me this. Look at that, you got a black staple. Make sure it dries, put it in the gun, and you got a black staple. And you can do that any color. But that's the only place I would use it on cambric. I mean, I don't staple my double piping on, because even if you have the same color staple as your fabric, it's still going to make a little indentation and a distortion on the double piping, and you don't want to do that, okay? So let's see what they did. I'd be very surprised if they glued this. And the reason manufacturers don't glue is because it takes longer, more mistakes can happen, glue can drip, etc. Is there another question, Michaela?
No, but am I taking this completely off, or?
No, you can leave that loose too. Okay, and if you see there's a piping on that, I'm just gonna bring that over to the camera to show them what you've been working on. This is a beautiful mid-century thing. People won't believe this. This is actually a Hans Wagner, very high-end mid-century chair that Michaela's very carefully taken apart for me to upholster, but you can see the label. Very, very sought after piece of furniture, and the designer name is very well recognized. So Michaela's been undoing the staple work here. By the way, the Danes, they actually started with the pneumatic staple gun. Way before us, they had these. We started using the pneumatic staple gun in the 80s, but they had them, I think, as early as the 50s and 60s over there. It made a huge difference in production and streamlining the piece of furniture. So what she did was, thank you, Michaela, she undid this side and the other side, but now we have a piping, which I'm wondering how they did this. Wow, I'm really surprised. So I can tell people right now that this has been upholstered once before. And the reason I know that is because if you lift this up, you see a modern way of closing up outside. It's called ply grip. It's a piece of metal with these little prongs in it. And I can assure you that originally this was hand stitched. It had the piping, definitely, the piping running along this is the only way to finish it. But what they did, what Hans Wagner would have done, and I've seen these, is would have been cardboard tacking tape, and then this fabric would have been hand stitched down. So that's the difference. So I'm going to ask Michaela I'm going to ask her in this case to undo the fabric, because that's the only way she's going to get. I'm going to ask her to carefully take the cotton off, because I may or may not reuse it. I don't know yet, because we'll see. And I'm going to ask her to remove very carefully, Michaela, because these are very sharp. And I'll show her what she can do is kind of roll it along like this. But she needs to take this out like this, save all the fabric and the stuffing. Keep the muslin on, okay? Wow, okay. So let's remove our staple gun from the seam now, because I think we're all done with that. And we've got like 10 more minutes, so Erica, if you're still on, or anybody else, we've had a lot of people sign up, and if you guys are watching, if you have questions about the semester, feel free to ask. So let's give this a pull. I can't tell right now what they did here. So they actually glued it. This is glue. I'm really surprised. So it could be that this has been upholstered too. Let me see if I can tell. No, I think this is a manufactured piece, probably a really high-end manufacturer, because as you can see on the Hans Wagner, that's a high-end manufacturer who hand stitch, which is traditional. Now that's interesting because that's a modern piece of furniture, but they use the traditional technique of hand stitching. So that's interesting. But this is rattan trade winds. I'm not sure about that. I'm not familiar with that. But I'm really surprised that this is glued on, if it's a manufacturer. So let's take the rest of it off, because I do want to show you. So the fabric is coming off with the double piping in some areas. That's actually a bonus when that happens. So I would say the rattan does not take a staple in that very well, because this is really coming off nicely for me. So we're gonna do it the same way with the double piping. We don't need to use that as a pattern or anything, because we know how to do that. I'm going to take the rest of this apart. Now notice I'm using a pair of pliers, and I'm actually showing you an easier way of doing this. Michaela, because she's just starting, and I wanted to be really careful, especially on that Hans Wagner, is I'm having her take each staple out, because I'm trying to get her used to the tools too. I'm trying to get her to build hand strength up also. It's another reason why we do that, to train people like that. But what I'm showing you here is how, because I know how to pull fabric, and like for instance, I'll show you, pull the fabric this way. See, I'm using a pair of pliers too, not my side cutters, so I get a better grip on the fabric. And the fabric, combination of the rattan fabric, it's helping. It's really what I would say a very friendly piece to strip. I mean, sometimes what you do is you go to pull this and it doesn't go anywhere. So hopefully that when you got a piece that's stapled, staples are harder to take out than tacks. You can pull it like this. And sometimes I should tell you that one way of pulling a fabric, try one way. If it doesn't work, go the other way. You'd be surprised how that works. One way could be easier than the other in regards to pulling. So then if that doesn't work, you need to go back. Even us professional upholsterers have to go back to one staple at a time. So I'm going to pull this out here. I'm going to throw this away. Okay, so now I'm down to, I'm not gonna go and bore you with trying to take every staple out. Now there's staples that are loose now that I would go back before I went, if I was working on this by myself, I would take those out first before I do the next step, which is this. I'm just taking this, removing this is the foam, and this is the date. They use actually a synthetic cotton on the front of this. And I'm gonna save this because this is polyurethane. And polyurethane does not break down. It's not like latex. So my customers, we talk, and and I tell them exactly what I do. I try to save as much of the, as long as the chair has a good history, and it hasn't been bug infested or smoke infested or whatever. Polyurethane can be reused. I mean, I don't like taking something down to the frame and then putting all new foam, throwing the old foam away, which is unnecessary. Putting new foam in. I try to, I think upholsterers are great recyclers from that standpoint. So I would encourage you all at home to reuse as much as you can, within reason. I mean, if you find something on the street you're not sure of, you have to strip it down. I understand that. But if it's a family chair, and if it's 20, 25, even 30 years old, if it's a contemporary piece, you can reuse cushions, you can reuse foam like that. It's not a problem. So now I want to remove the outside back that I first showed you. Now we got about 6 minutes, so anybody else with a question, feel free.
Yes.
Okay.
This is from Anne.
Hi, Ann.
Is there a minimum temperature a glue gun should reach in order to be most effective? Thanks for all your instruction. Looking forward to the next online class.
Good, thank you, Ann. Yeah, I'm not sure about the temperature, but I actually can, here's how to test it, okay? Let me get my glue gun out again. So let's say you have you can have 2 pieces of fabric, you don't even need a double piping. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take, I'm gonna show you, you're gonna take 2 pieces of fabric. I'm not gonna plug the glue gun in, it's gonna take too long to show you that. Take 2 pieces of fabric to test your gun, right? Make sure that you give it at least 5 to 6, 7 minutes to heat up. So make sure that when you pull the trigger, it's got a nice flow. That's another way to tell that it's heated at the maximum. That it's got a nice flow. And it's actually a little smoke coming out is also an indication that it's hot enough. So when you do that, take a bead, not like I'm doing up like this, but I want to show you up to the camera. And you need to, by the way, if you're not used to a glue gun, you need to make sure that you know the flow of the glue. You don't want to blob it on. You don't want too much glue, especially when you're doing double piping. So what you want is a nice even row, a row that comes out, and then with the tip of your gun, the tip of the gun, you're just gonna spread it out, not the width of the double piping. but you're gonna we got somebody at the door. Live TV, honey. Come on in. So you just take an even flow, and then put your double piping on, right? So what happens is, then you put your double piping on, you put your other piece of fabric together, and you've got like 3 seconds to bond it, which means that you just kind of, with your finger, just pushing it in. Your finger actually acts like a clamp. So after that's done, after 3 or 4 seconds, you shouldn't be able to pull the 2 pieces of fabric away from one another. You should, if you really give it a good yank, you might be able to separate it. But if you just go like this, you know that the glue is not hot enough. So you need to get another gun, because you need to make sure that bond is good. The worst thing is you do a chair, get it all upholstered, get it all double piped, and have the piping fall off, which can happen after you deliver the chair, for instance, right? So that's a good tip. Good question, really good question, Ann. But I don't know the exact temperature. I don't know that. Manufacturer specs might on a gun, but I don't know what makes glue, what the heat should be, what the final temperature should be. But I just showed you practical what has to happen. So is there any other questions?
No.
Okay. So I did want to show you this before we finish up. We got about 4 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off, which is actually reversed. You're seeing the outside back put on first. So when you're looking at it this way, it's actually the back side of the fabric, right? So it goes against, and sometimes you're looking at it going, am I doing this right? Because you're looking at it straight on, but that's the back side of the fabric, and this is the good side of the fabric. So let's see how easy this pulls off. So we have an active shop here too. We're on a busy street, so we get people, we get fire engines going by, we get the postman coming in, we get special deliveries, and, it's kind of fun sometimes. Even live we get things happen. So I'm gonna pull this. See what I'm doing? I'm using my hand now for this. You have to be careful when you do that, because you don't want to get a staple, but I'm going to go to my plan. I'm very lucky that this is coming off like this. Now, can you imagine if you had taken out one staple at a time like Michaela was doing down here with this one, because there's probably hundreds of staples in this piece. So then I just go back, and I'm just going to take individual staples out, and I'm done. I usually use my side cutters for that. So another question and answer, and we're all set, and so we'll see you next time, which will be in the following class for the next question and answer. So we'll see you next time. Thanks.